When the guards went to get him, they found this prisoner had cut off another man's skin and was wearing it over his face. There was this man named Henry, and Henry said that he had done like a 15-year stint in prison. Well, halfway through his prison sentence, because of an incident that occurred, he was actually transferred to another prison. Well, he said after a couple weeks of being at this prison, he noticed how different it was because they were very strict. Every morning they would get them out of their cells and they would do roll call and check and make sure each prisoner was accounted for. He said they would constantly come in through the night and were checking on the prisoners, and they were very particular about where each prisoner was at all times. So he talked to some of the inmates and was like, this isn't like any other prison I've been to. Like, they're very, very strict. They said, well, 6 months before you came, there was an incident. One of the prisoners here attacked another prisoner and then went into a cell. When the guards went to get him, they found this prisoner had cut off another man's skin and was wearing it over his face. So they subdued him and brought him away. But when they look at this prisoner, they realize that he was not an actual inmate at that prison. They had no idea who he was or where he came from. And then this prisoner who was put into a solitary confinement cell somehow managed to disappear, and they could not find him anywhere in the prison. And they could not look for him outside the prison because they didn't know who he was. So he said they were being very precautious now to make sure they knew who everyone was and where they were at all times. So he said, over the period of, 5 or 6 months, he knew that, a lot of prisoners, sometimes they crack and they will lose their mind and just sort of snap. But he said over this short period of time, he noticed so many prisoners, one by one, they would go like mad and they would attack another inmate. And, it was like something was off about them. And before this would happen, they would start acting strange. They would get really quiet. When they talked to anybody, they would walk with a sort of a weird gait. And, they would smile and stare at people. And then just one day lose it and start attacking someone, right? Well, he talked to this other guy who happened to be an inmate there, who was this older gentleman who was a Navajo Native American. And he told him, I think that one of the prisoners here is a Skinwalker, and that, he is coming for each and every one of us. One by one, it will be our time. And so, he is kind of like freaked out by this story, but he's like, nah, that can't be real. And then he said shortly after he was going to get released, or shortly before he got released, his cellmate, right, started acting this way, was very quiet, didn't talk to anyone. At night, he was like talking to himself. And then he said one day he just snapped and attacked another prisoner. And he knew that it was probably his turn next. But he said thankfully he was released, and he still to this day thinks that he was in prison with a Skinwalker.